The massive doors of the Galactic Senate chamber hissed open with a sound like escaping steam. Ambassador James Mitchell walked through them, his black leather shoes clicking against the polished metal floor. Around him, the circular chamber rose up like the inside of a giant egg, with thousands of seats filled with creatures from across the galaxy. James had seen many alien species during his 5 years as Earth's representative, but the sight still amazed him. There were the Zarathi with their wolf-like faces and silver fur, sitting in groups like hunting packs. The tall, elegant Vortak resembled giant cats, their golden eyes following his every movement. In the upper galleries, bird-like creatures with rainbow feathers chirped to each other in musical voices, while slug-like beings left shiny trails on their specially designed seats. But today none of them looked friendly. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform where 3 figures waited for him. The chief arbiter was a Ten-T, her purple skin covered in glowing spots that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her 8 long arms moved gracefully as she arranged the documents before her. To her left sat Judge Vex, a creature that looked like a walking tree with bark for skin and leaves growing from his head. On her right was Judge Kamal, whose rock-like body sparkled with tiny crystals. James reached the defendant's platform and placed his hands on the metal rail. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the air recyclers and the occasional rustle of movement from the galleries above. Ambassador James Mitchell of the planet Earth, the chief arbiter began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. You stand accused before this tribunal of the most serious crime in galactic law. James nodded. I understand the charges, Your Honor. Do you? Judge Vex's voice sounded like wind through leaves. Let me read them to be certain. He lifted a glowing tablet. The human species stands accused of ecological genocide. Complete destruction of their planet's natural predator population. Systematic elimination of all apex hunters from their world's ecosystem. Angry voices rose from the galleries. A Zarathi delegate stood up, his ears flat against his head. No civilized species has ever done such a thing. Every world in the galaxy maintains balance between predator and prey. It is the natural order, called out a Vortak senator, her tail twitching with agitation. Predators control population. They keep the weak from overwhelming the strong. Without them, ecosystems collapse. More voices joined in. Monsters, someone shouted from the upper galleries. They killed everything that could challenge them. Judge Kamal raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber quieted. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. The evidence is clear. Our survey teams found no large predators on Earth. No creatures that hunt other animals for food. Nothing that could threaten human dominance. Where are your lions? Demanded a bird-like creature from the third gallery. Where are your great hunters? What happened to the beasts that should rule your forests? Added a Zarathi pack leader. James listened to the accusations pile up around him like storm clouds. He had known this day would come. Earth's entry into galactic civilization had been smooth until the environmental surveys began. When alien scientists studied Earth's ecosystems, they found something that shocked them to their core. Ambassador Mitchell, the chief arbiter said, her glowing spots pulsing faster now. How do you answer these charges? James looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. Some showed anger, others disgust, and a few showed what might have been fear. He understood their reaction. In galactic civilization, every species lived alongside their natural predators. It was considered the mark of a balanced, healthy world. Your Honor, James said calmly, I request permission to present evidence in humanity's defense. Evidence? Judge Vex's leaves rustled with what sounded like laughter. What evidence could possibly justify such destruction? The evidence of what really happened on Earth, James replied. The complete story, not just what your survey teams found. A Zarathi delegate in the front row stood up. We know what happened. You humans grew strong and decided you did not want to share your world. So you killed everything that could challenge you. You destroyed the natural order, added a Vortak senator. You upset the balance that has existed since life began. James shook his head. Respectfully, senators, you're wrong. We didn't destroy Earth's predators. Then where are they? Demanded Judge Kamal. James looked directly at the chief arbiter. That's what I'd like to explain. But the truth is more complex than your survey teams realized. The chief arbiter's spots pulsed in a pattern that James had learned meant deep thought. Around the chamber, whispered conversations broke out in dozens of languages. The sound reminded James of wind through a forest, or water flowing over rocks. Finally she spoke. Very well, Ambassador Mitchell. This tribunal will hear your evidence. But know that the crimes you are accused of carry the maximum penalty under galactic law. James felt a chill run down his spine. He knew what that meant. If found guilty, humanity would be expelled from galactic civilization. Earth would be quarantined, cut off from all trade and communication with other worlds. Humanity would be alone in the universe once again. I understand, Your Honor, he said. But I believe that once you hear the truth, you'll see that humanity didn't commit genocide against Earth's predators. Then what did happen? Judge Vex asked. James took a deep breath. We became them. The chamber erupted in confused voices. The chief arbiter had to activate the sound dampeners to restore order. Explain yourself, Ambassador, she said once silence returned. James looked up at the thousands of alien faces surrounding him. Your Honor, what I'm about to tell you will challenge everything the galaxy believes about predators and prey. But I ask that you listen to the complete story before you judge us. We will listen, the chief arbiter said. Begin. James pressed a button on his control pad, and the lights in the great chamber dimmed. Above the assembly, a massive holographic display flickered to life, showing a world that looked nothing like the modern Earth the aliens had surveyed. Thick forests stretched to the horizon, filled with trees so tall they seemed to touch the sky. Vast grasslands rolled like green oceans under an ancient sun. And moving through this prehistoric landscape were creatures that made the alien delegates shift nervously in their seats. This is Earth 70,000 years ago, James said, his voice echoing in the darkened chamber. Before cities, before farms, before humans changed anything at all. The hologram zoomed in on a saber-toothed cat stalking through tall grass. The beast was massive, easily twice the size of the largest vortex in the chamber. Its curved fangs gleamed like white daggers, each one longer than a human hand. Its muscles rippled under golden fur as it moved with deadly grace. Several Zarathi delegates leaned forward, their ears pricked with interest. Now that, one of them whispered, is a proper predator. The scene shifted to show a giant bear rearing up on its hind legs. The creature towered nearly 12 feet tall, its massive paws armed with claws like curved knives. Its roar shook the holographic trees around it. Cave bears, James explained. They weighed over a ton each and could crush a tree trunk with their bare paws. Next came the dire wolves, moving in a coordinated pack of 30 or more. Each wolf was larger than any modern dog, with powerful jaws and intelligent yellow eyes that missed nothing. They flowed across the landscape like a gray river of death. These were Earth's apex predators, James continued. For millions of years they ruled their domains without challenge. They were faster, stronger, and more dangerous than anything else on the planet. Judge Vex's leaves rustled with approval. As it should be. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is natural law. Yes, James agreed. And by that law, humans should have been extinct within a few generations. The hologram shifted again, and now the aliens could see early humans for the first time. They looked smaller and weaker than modern humans, wearing simple animal skins and carrying crude stone tools. A group of them huddled around a small fire, their eyes constantly watching the darkness beyond the flames. Look at them, James said quietly. No fangs. No claws. No thick hide or powerful muscles. Average speed, average strength, and completely helpless against any of the creatures I just showed you. A Vortex senator laughed, a sound like a cat's purr mixed with grinding stone. They look like prey animals. How did such weak creatures survive long enough to become a threat? Watch, James said. The hologram showed a hunting scene. A group of 20 humans had found tracks in the mud beside a river. The tracks belonged to a massive elk, bigger than any animal the aliens had ever seen. The humans examined the tracks carefully, then began to follow them. But they didn't move like any predator the aliens knew. The Zarathi hunted in swift, coordinated attacks. The Vortex used stealth and sudden strikes. These humans did neither. Instead they simply walked. Hour after hour, the humans followed the elk's trail. When the great beast heard them coming and bounded away on powerful legs, the humans didn't chase it. They just kept walking at the same steady pace following the tracks. This is boring, complained a bird-like creature from the upper galleries. Where is the attack? Where is the kill? Patience, James said. The hologram sped up, showing the passage of time. The elk would run for miles then stop to rest and eat. But when it looked back, the humans were still there, still following, still walking at that same relentless pace. The elk would run again, but the humans never stopped. On the second day, the elk's runs became shorter. Its rests became longer. The great animal's sides heaved with exhaustion, while the humans showed no signs of tiring. On the third day, the elk could barely manage a quick trot before it had to stop. The humans were closer now, close enough for the elk to see their eyes. There was no hatred there, no bloodlust. Just patient determination. On the fourth day the elk stumbled and fell. It tried to rise but couldn't. The humans surrounded it calmly and ended its suffering with their simple spears. The chamber was completely silent. Persistence hunting, James explained. While every other predator on Earth relied on speed or strength, humans perfected something different. Endurance. We couldn't outrun our prey, but we could outwalk it. We couldn't overpower it, but we could outlast it. Dr. Margaret Thompson stepped up beside James. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple knot, and her hands were steady as she adjusted the holographic controls. The human body is built for distance running. We're one of the few species that can regulate body temperature through sweating. Our breathing and heartbeat can synchronize for maximum efficiency. We can maintain a steady pace for days without stopping. The hologram showed more hunting scenes. Humans following herds of bison across endless plains. Humans tracking deer through dense forests. Always the same pattern. Steady, relentless pursuit until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. You wore them down, Judge Kamal said, his crystal voice filled with something like awe. Like water wearing away stone. But that's not the remarkable part, James said. Watch this. The scene changed to show a pack of dire wolves that had discovered the same elk herd the humans were hunting. The wolves attacked with savage efficiency, bringing down a young elk in minutes. As they fed, the humans approached. The aliens expected a fight. Instead, the humans simply waited at a respectful distance. When the wolves had eaten their fill and moved on, the humans moved in to claim what remained. Scavenging, a Zarathi delegate said with disgust. They were scavengers, not hunters. We were survivors, James corrected. We learned from every predator on Earth. From the wolves we learned pack coordination. From the cats we learned patience and planning. From the bears, we learned which plants were safe to eat during the lean times. Margaret manipulated the controls again. The hologram now showed humans working together in ways that seemed almost impossible. They moved rocks to create traps, dug pits to capture prey, and used fire to drive animals toward waiting spears. Tool use combined with cooperation, she explained. No other species on Earth had both. Humans didn't just adapt to their environment. They began to change it. The implications hung in the air like smoke from an ancient fire. The holographic display shifted, and suddenly the prehistoric wilderness was gone. In its place stood something the alien delegates had never seen before. A human settlement from 10,000 years ago. Small huts made of mud and straw clustered together behind wooden fences. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and strange four-legged creatures moved freely among the humans. Dr. Robert Hayes stepped forward, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. His beard was streaked with white, and his eyes held the calm patience of someone who had spent his entire life working with animals. This is when everything changed, he said simply. The aliens leaned forward in their seats, trying to understand what they were seeing. The creatures living with the humans looked familiar, yet different. They had the general shape of wolves, but their ears were softer, their tails curved differently, and their faces seemed almost friendly. Those are not wolves, observed a Zarathi pack leader, his voice filled with confusion. But they are not prey animals either. You're right, Robert agreed. There's something new. Something that had never existed before on any world in the galaxy. The hologram zoomed in on one of the creatures. It sat beside a human child, its tongue hanging out in what looked remarkably like a smile. When the child dropped a piece of food, the creature gently picked it up and placed it back in the child's hand. We call them dogs, Robert explained. They came from wolves, but they're not wolves anymore. Judge Vex's sleeves rustled with growing alarm. What did you do to them? The scene shifted to show the transformation taking place over many generations. Wolves approached human settlements, drawn by the scent of food scraps. Instead of driving them away, the humans fed the friendliest ones. Over time, these wolves began to look different. Their ears became floppy instead of pointed. Their coats grew in new colors. Their tails curled over their backs. We offered them a choice, Robert said. They could remain wild wolves, fighting for survival in the forest, or they could join us and never go hungry again. But at what cost? Demanded a Vortax senator. They lost their wildness, their strength, their very nature as predators. Did they? Robert asked. The hologram now showed the dogs working alongside humans. They helped track prey during hunts, their keen noses finding trails that humans would miss. They guarded the settlements at night, their sharp ears hearing dangers that humans could not detect. When enemies approached, they fought beside their human partners with fierce loyalty. They became better predators, James added from beside the platform. Not individually but as part of a team with humans. Together, we were more successful than either species had ever been alone. The scene changed again. Now the aliens saw massive wild cattle called aurochs, creatures so large and fierce that even the biggest predators avoided them. But somehow humans had captured young calves and raised them in captivity. Over hundreds of generations, Robert continued, these wild cattle became cows. We selected the gentlest ones to breed, the ones that gave the most milk, the ones that grew the biggest. Eventually they depended on us completely for food and protection. The hologram showed vast herds of cattle grazing peacefully in fields, guarded by dogs and tended by humans. There were so many of them that they covered the landscape like a brown sea. You enslaved them, accused a bird-like delegate from the upper galleries. You took their freedom and made them prisoners. We gave them abundance, Robert replied calmly. Wild aurochs lived harsh lives, always searching for food, always fleeing from predators, always fighting to survive. Most died young. But cattle live long, comfortable lives with regular meals and medical care when they're sick. Margaret Thompson joined Robert at the holographic controls. The numbers tell the story, she said, bringing up statistics that floated in the air above the assembly. When humans first encountered wild aurochs, there were perhaps 50,000 of them left on Earth. Today there are over 1 billion cattle across human worlds. The chamber fell silent as the aliens absorbed this information. The hologram shifted once more, showing wild horses thundering across ancient plains. These creatures were smaller than modern horses, with shaggy coats and wild eyes. But gradually, the scene changed to show humans riding larger, sleeker horses into battle and across great distances. Transportation, warfare, agriculture, Robert listed. Horses gave us mobility we never could have achieved on our own feet. In return we gave them safety, food and care. And cats? Asked Judge Kamal, his crystal voice tinkling like wind chimes. The scene showed small wild cats prowling around human grain stores, hunting the rats and mice that tried to steal the stored food. Over time, these cats grew comfortable around humans, and humans welcomed their help in protecting their supplies. Cats chose to domesticate themselves, Robert explained. We didn't capture them or train them. They simply decided that life was easier with humans than without us. A Zarathi delegate stood up, his silver fur bristling with agitation. This is not natural. Predators compete with each other. They don't cooperate. Why not? James asked. Competition wastes energy and resources. Cooperation multiplies them. The hologram now showed the full scope of what humans had accomplished. Vast farms worked by cattle and horses, protected by dogs and cats. Sheep provided wool for clothing, pigs converted food scraps into meat, and chickens laid eggs daily. Everything worked together in careful balance. You didn't just tame individual animals, realized the chief arbiter, her glowing spots pulsing rapidly. You redesigned entire species. We created partnerships, Robert corrected. Every animal that joined us became more successful than their wild relatives. They spread to every continent, lived longer lives and had more offspring than they ever could have in the wild. Dr. Hayes gestured to the holographic display, which now showed modern Earth with billions of domestic animals living alongside humans. The descendants of those first wolves, cattle, horses, and cats now outnumber all wild animals combined. From an evolutionary standpoint, joining with humans was the most successful strategy any species could choose. The implications hung heavy in the chamber's recycled air. The aliens had assumed humans had destroyed their competitors. The truth was far more disturbing. Humans had convinced their competitors to join them willingly. But what about the ones who refused? Asked a Vortak senator quietly. James and Robert exchanged a meaningful glance. That, James said, brings us to the next part of our story. The holographic display flickered and transformed into something that made the alien delegates gasp in shock. Modern Earth appeared before them in stunning detail, but it was nothing like what their survey teams had reported. Vast cities of gleaming metal and glass stretched across continents, connected by ribbons of light that pulsed with constant traffic. But between these urban centers lay something unexpected. Enormous patches of green wilderness that seemed untouched by civilization. Dr. Elizabeth Carter stepped up to the control platform, her movements crisp and efficient. As Earth's Director of Conservation, she had spent 30 years managing what the aliens thought no longer existed. Her gray hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her eyes held the sharp focus of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. Current human population of Earth, 8 billion, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. Current tiger population, 42,000. Current lion population, 35,000. Current wolf population, 300,000. The Zarathi delegate who had been most vocal in his accusations shot to his feet, his ears flat against his skull. Impossible. Our survey teams found no large predators roaming free on your world. Elizabeth smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both gentle and unsettling. That's because you didn't know where to look. She touched the holographic controls, and the display zoomed in on what appeared to be empty grassland. But as the image focused, the aliens could see that it wasn't empty at all. A massive fence ran along the horizon, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. And within that fence, something golden moved through the tall grass. Yellowstone National Park, Elizabeth announced. 2.2 million acres of protected wilderness. The golden shape resolved into a pack of wolves, their thick winter coats gleaming in the afternoon sun. They moved with the same deadly grace their ancestors had possessed, but something was different. These wolves wore small collars with blinking lights, and as they hunted, unseen cameras tracked their every movement. We know the name of every wolf in this pack, Elizabeth continued. We monitor their health, track their movements, and maintain detailed genetic records going back 15 generations. When they get sick, we treat them. When their population grows too large for the available territory, we relocate some to other parks. The scene shifted to show a different landscape, the endless plains of Africa, where lions lazed under acacia trees while zebras grazed in the distance. But again, the careful observer could spot the signs of human management. Research stations dotted the horizon, and vehicles with tracking equipment moved along hidden roads. The Serengeti Conservation Area, Elizabeth said. 14.7 million acres where we maintain the largest population of lions on Earth. A Vortex senator leaned forward, her golden eyes reflecting the holographic light. You keep them in cages. Giant cages, but cages nonetheless. We keep them alive, Elizabeth replied simply. Before these conservation areas existed, lion populations were crashing. Humans and lions competed for the same territory and lions were losing. Now they have guaranteed territory where no human development is allowed. The hologram shifted again, this time showing a snowy forest where massive tigers stalked through deep drifts. These creatures were even larger than the ancient saber-toothed cats, their orange and black stripes providing perfect camouflage against the shadows of the trees. The Siberian Tiger Reserve, Elizabeth continued. 4 million acres of protected forest. When we established this reserve 50 years ago, there were fewer than 200 Siberian tigers left in the wild. Today there are over 1,000. Thomas Bennett stepped forward to join Elizabeth at the controls. As humanity's leading terraforming engineer, his weathered face spoke of years spent transforming hostile worlds into gardens. We don't just preserve Earth's predators, he said, his voice rough from years of breathing recycled air on colony worlds. We're giving them new homes. The display changed to show an alien landscape under a red sky. Strange trees with purple leaves grew beside rivers of crystal clear water. And moving through this alien forest were creatures that definitely belonged on Earth. A pack of wolves hunting something that looked like a six-legged deer. Kepler Colony, Thomas explained. We introduced wolves there 12 years ago. They've adapted perfectly to the local ecosystem and are now helping control the population of native grazers that were overrunning the settlement areas. The scene shifted again to show lions prowling through grasslands under a different sun, their manes blowing in alien winds. New Kenya Colony. The lions love the wide open spaces and the colonists love having them there. Tourism from other worlds has become a major source of income. Judge Vex's leaves rustled with what might have been distress. You control them completely. Every aspect of their lives is managed by humans. We ensure their survival, Elizabeth corrected. Without human intervention, most of these species would have gone extinct centuries ago. The modern world is too crowded, too developed for large predators to survive on their own. The holographic display now showed a laboratory where scientists in white coats worked with glowing equipment. On the screens behind them, DNA sequences scrolled past in endless streams of genetic code. We've mapped the complete genomes of every major predator species, Dr. Carter explained. We maintain genetic databases, frozen tissue samples, and even have the capability to recreate extinct species from preserved DNA. Like the woolly mammoth, Thomas added. The display showed massive, shaggy creatures grazing in Arctic tundra under human supervision. Extinct for 4,000 years until we brought them back. Now there are herds of them on 3 different worlds. A bird-like delegate in the upper galleries called out in a voice like wind chimes, But they're not truly wild anymore. They exist only because you allow it. Elizabeth nodded. That's correct. Every large predator on Earth and every human world exists within systems we've designed and maintain. They live where we decide they should live, eat what we provide for them, and breed according to schedules we approve. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The aliens had thought humans were simply more successful competitors who had driven other predators to extinction. The reality was far more complex and in many ways more disturbing. You've made yourselves gods, whispered the chief arbiter, her glowing spots flickering rapidly. James Mitchell stepped back to the center of the platform. No, he said quietly. We've made ourselves gardeners. We tend the garden of life itself, deciding what grows and what doesn't, what lives and what dies. The weight of that statement settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket, smothering conversation and leaving only the sound of recycled air moving through the vast space. James Mitchell stood alone at the center of the great chamber. The other human experts had stepped back, leaving him in the circle of light cast by the holographic projectors. Above him, the display showed Earth as seen from space, a blue marble covered in the lights of human cities, connected by streams of ships moving between the stars. The silence in the chamber was complete. Not even the usual whispers and rustles that accompanied galactic proceedings could be heard. Thousands of alien eyes focused on the lone human figure, waiting for whatever revelation would come next. You called us here to answer for the disappearance of Earth's predators, James said, his voice carrying clearly in the vast space. But you asked the wrong question. He gestured to the holographic Earth spinning slowly above them. You wanted to know what happened to our lions and tigers and wolves? You assumed we destroyed them because we were afraid of them, or because we wanted their territory, or because we couldn't share our world with dangerous creatures. The display expanded to show the entire galaxy, with golden lines marking trade routes that connected thousands of worlds. Human colonies glowed like new stars at key intersections, while diplomatic stations maintained peace between different species. The predators didn't disappear from Earth, James continued, his words falling into the silence like stones into still water. They evolved. A ripple of confusion passed through the assembled delegates. The Zarathi pack leader's ears twitched with uncertainty. What do you mean, evolved? James smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Look around you. What do you see? The aliens looked at each other, then back at James, waiting for him to explain. Human colonies on 300 worlds, James said. Human trade routes connecting every major civilization. Human diplomats preventing wars between species that have been enemies for millennia. Human doctors saving lives on planets we've never even visited. Human teachers spreading knowledge to races that are still discovering fire. Admiral Grace Wilson materialized as a hologram beside James. Her military uniform was perfectly pressed, her posture straight as a steel rod. The medals on her chest represented conflicts the aliens had never heard of, victories in wars that had been prevented before they could begin. In the past 50 years, she reported in a crisp, professional tone, human intervention has prevented 27 interspecies wars. Human agricultural techniques have eliminated famine on 49 worlds. Human medical advances have saved over 3 billion non-human lives across the galaxy. The statistics hung in the air like accusations. We don't conquer worlds, James explained. We improve them. We don't destroy civilizations. We help them grow. We don't eliminate other species. We help them become more than they ever imagined they could be. Dr. Robert Hayes stepped forward one final time, his weathered hands steady as he adjusted the holographic controls. Every species in this chamber has accepted human help at some point in the past century. The display showed the Zarathi homeworld, where human-designed medical centers had doubled their lifespan by treating a genetic disease that had plagued them for generations. It showed Vorthack colonies that had tripled in size using human terraforming techniques. It showed dozens of other worlds where human knowledge had solved problems that had seemed impossible. The Zarathi live longer because of us, Hayes said simply. The Vorthack control more territory because of us. The Kalari have eliminated poverty because of us. The Tondi have reached the stars because we shared our technology with them. A Vorthack senator rose to her feet, her golden eyes wide with growing realization. You're doing to us what you did to the wolves. Not exactly, James corrected. The wolves had a choice, join us or remain wild. You have the same choice, but the stakes are different now. The holographic display changed to show human space. Hundreds of worlds connected by a vast network of trade, communication, and mutual support. At the edges of that network, other species' territories looked small and isolated by comparison. We offer partnership, James continued. We share our technology, our knowledge, our protection. In return, we ask for cooperation, for participation in the galactic community we're building. And if we refuse? Asked Judge Kamal, his crystal voice ringing like broken glass. James's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. You can remain independent, of course. That's your right as sovereign species. The chamber waited for more, but James said nothing else. The implications hung in the recycled air like smoke. The chief arbiter's glowing spots pulsed rapidly as she processed what she was hearing. You're saying that humanity has become the galaxy's apex predator. We're saying that we've evolved beyond traditional predation, James replied. We don't hunt other species for food or territory. We cultivate them. We help them grow stronger, smarter, more prosperous. And in return, they become part of something larger than any individual species could achieve alone. Dr. Elizabeth Carter stepped forward, her conservation expertise giving weight to her words. Look at what we've accomplished together. No famines. No plagues. No wars between civilized species. Trade and knowledge flowing freely between worlds. This is what the galaxy looks like when it's properly managed. Managed, repeated a Zarathi delegate, the word sounding bitter in his mouth. Tended, James corrected gently. Like a garden. We plant what should grow, we water what needs nourishment, and we carefully remove anything that threatens the health of the whole. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They were beginning to understand their position in this garden. The question before you today isn't what we did to Earth's predators, James said, his voice carrying a note of finality. The question is what kind of relationship you want with the galaxy's gardeners. He gestured to the assembled delegates with an open hand. You can work with us like the species that have already joined our community. You can share in the prosperity, the security, the knowledge we offer. You can help us tend the garden and ensure that all species thrive. The pause that followed seemed to stretch for hours. Or, James said quietly, you can choose to remain outside the garden. Wild and free but also alone. His smile returned, pleasant and patient. But I think you already know how that story ends. The chamber fell into absolute silence as every delegate contemplated their future in a galaxy where humanity had become the ultimate predator. Not through violence but through indispensable necessity. In the end, the most successful predators weren't the ones who killed their prey. They were the ones who made their prey dependent on them for survival.